Okay, good morning. So the topics that are left to cover that we haven't covered yet this week are this concept here that we're looking at, which is destructuring. And it boils down to you can do this, you can work with this concept, destructuring, with arrays or objects. So it is true you can destructure arrays or objects. And so we'll work a little bit with both. And so that's kind of what I want to take a look at is this concept of destructuring. And then I want to look at the rest and spread operators. And so didn't mean to click on that. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code, day 5 of just kind of reviewing some JavaScript. And yesterday, just in chatting here with Jacob, there's a extension you might choose to install on Visual Studio, Bootstrap 5 quick snippets. So I installed that yesterday. What this allows me to do is just use a snippet to insert a Bootstrap HTML bare bones template. I don't have to go to the Bootstrap, get bootstrap.com, go to the docs, copy the template and paste it in. I now have access to a template for Bootstrap via a code snippet. And so if you want to follow along, kind of verbatim what I'm doing, you may choose to install this extension because I found it very useful to kind of get up and running kind of quickly. And then additionally, there's all sorts of, you want a Bootstrap carousel, you want a Bootstrap card, you want a Bootstrap grid, yada, 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 right? So there's a bunch of snippets for Bootstrap, which I will be tinkering with. But, just to demonstrate this, whoops, don't create a folder, create a file, index.htm. And to kind of show you this snippet, if you type in BS for Bootstrap, this snippet right here, and this is Bootstrap 5, of course. You got to be aware of your versions because all of the different versions have different class names for everything. But this is your Bootstrap master template. So if you just type in BS for Bootstrap or BS5, really the full thing is $, and then you hit tab. Oh, that didn't work. I guess it's just BS tab. You're going to notice what is a standard template. Of course, you fix the doc type here to be capital letters to make our linter happy, doc type, so that our browsers know that we're writing HTML5, and then it's got a CDN to 5.2. This will work for Bootstrap 5, but like you said, we're on 5.3, so you might keep in mind the versioning, right? The major version, you don't change that without breaking fixes, right? So when you go from version 4 to version 5, stuff is going to break in between, right? So it's not very easy to upgrade a Bootstrap 4 site into a Bootstrap 5 site without fixing a lot of things. So that's the major version. This second version that we just mentioned, hey, it's on 5.2 versus 5.3, that's your feature releases. So it's safe to assume there might be a new feature in Bootstrap 5 that we don't have access to in 5.2 if there is a 5.3, right? So we might be missing a feature or two. And then this last one, this last dot, just as a reminder, this is typically bug fixes or performance. And so that's the the versioning system that most software follows. So we'll start with that. We got a header tag. It's kind of cool because it brings in some pretty standard header, main, and footer, and all of your CDNs to Bootstrap. So that's cool. Okay, so now let's bring in main.js. Whoop. And up in our HTML head, let's have a script tag to main.js. Let's add in the defer attribute. And we're going to start again. So what do we want to talk about here? We're going to destructure an array. We're going to destructure an object. We're going to explore the rest operator. We're going to explore the spread operator. So these are kind of the objectives for this one. And we're going to keep it high level. We're not going to get real deep into the weeds on these. Because I think that's what's needed. So let's start with an array. So we're going to say let my array equals maybe an array of strings. And I'll put my name and job title. And make a couple of variables. Now clearly this is an array, it's in brackets. And what destructuring allows us to do is extract the data out of the array and store it in individual variables. So we can say my name and my job equals my array. So this is destructuring. You're extracting the data out of an array, and this could be done a little bit differently. Another way of doing this would be my name equals my array sub 0 and my job equals my array sub 1, right? So really what is this doing? This is allowing for a shorthand, right, where we actually don't have to have two different statements. We can do the same thing with one line of code and a shorter syntax. And if I do a console log my name is my name and I am a software developer. And to go ahead and spin this up in the browser, let's hold down Control LO, Alt LO, I mean, which is the hotkey to open up live server. And if I inspect, go to console, you can see the data is extracted out. And my name is Evan, I'm a software developer. So we have demonstrated array destructuring. Again, you go through these tutorials, you'll see this kind of thing. Let's go ahead and destructure an object. So you're saying, because I've got 5500, yours is 5501.
Right, like if there's nothing else running, it will open up on 5500.
Uh-huh.
Is it because I have, like, I didn't just open the day 5, I opened up like the full folder?
Mm-hmm.
Could that be it?
I think it just depends. It kind of, like, if there would be something else on Windows that happened to use that port, or it also it has a range it tries it in. It just,
Oh, okay, so something might be using the.
Yeah, odds are is it was maybe in use yesterday. I don't know if you rebooted recently, because if you have another instance of Visual Studio running that's running a web page on 5500, sometimes those stay open.
I think I closed it without saving the stuff, and so when I opened it, I had to save it.
Yeah.
And close it, so it might still be registered.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I didn't think it did anything, and that's why I said dumb question.
No, no worries.
yeah,
As a teacher, I'm required to say there are no dumb questions. But are there? No, I'm just kidding. It's
wasn't asking if there are dumb questions be a dumb question?
we're going too many layers deep here. Okay, let's back up. So let's talk about destructuring an object. Now we already have some variables. I'm going to go ahead and everyone ready to move on? I'm going to go ahead and take that out, take that out. We already have our variables. Let's just put our data inside of an object now. So we'll say let my object equals, and I'll say my name and my job, software developer. So I'm just taking the same data and putting it in a different data structure. Now, notice up here, we had to have brackets because we're doing array destructuring. Down here, we're doing curlies because it's object destructuring. So I'll say my name, which is the name of my variable, and my job equals my object. Now, let's see, I don't think these parentheses are required. Putting parentheses around gets that red squiggly to go away. And so here, the keys are matched with local variable names. Right? So we got our local variables, and they're going to match the name of the keys. And then I could take my console log here and do the same kind of thing.
Sorry, did you explain why you had to have the parentheses?
Well, yeah. Because that's what I read right there. My linter told me to.
What was email one?
It says declaration or statement expected. This equal sign follows a block of statements. So if you intend on writing a destructuring assignment, you might need to wrap the whole assignment in parentheses. Yes, sir.
Do you not use let or const when you're declaring my name and my job?
We did on line 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we did on line 3. Yeah. I just commented everything else out up there, except for that one line. Cannot access my object before initialization. Did I?
You need a semicolon after.
Did I?
Yeah, you didn't
Good eye.
end the line.
Good eye. Good eye. Good eye. Now, I would encourage you, to tinker with this and see if you change this, right? So if I say, first off, it's not here, but it says name is decorated. It says a username. How about that? Username. See if we could change my name into username as such. And you're going to see you're getting an error. If you want to rename that variable, let's go to MDN. And kind of look at this a little bit, how that could be done. The answer to there is in these docs. The destructuring assignment in JavaScript expression, is a JavaScript expression that makes it possible to unpack values from arrays or unpack values from properties in objects into distinct variables. So you're kind of taking the data out into variables. So if you go down to examples, so I clicked on examples, here's array destructuring. I'm going to scroll past that and go to object destructuring, right? We can kind of see, here's assigning to new variable names. And so this can be done with a colon, right? So you have to know the original variable name and then colon, give it a new variable name. So if I want to change my name to username, I would do my name colon username. And then I should be able to replace that appropriately.
Also, it's similar to like the doing JS final. We had like there was first name colon first name to initialize them, but we could have done first name colon any name after that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I don't remember
Don't worry about it.
the final. Yeah. So there you go. So that's the proper syntax for taking a property out of an object and renaming it to a different identifier. Okay, let's kind of come back to the article. Okay, so we know basic assignment of object destructuring. We know how to assign it to new variable names. Default values. So maybe here I could say my salary, and then you do equals, and let's just say the default salary is $10,000. So if my object has a salary, it'll override the default value. So let me kind of collapse this so you can see this. And my salary is my salary. So right now my object does not have a salary. So it should return back my salary is $10,000, right? So providing a default value should it not be in the object. However, if I come in here and I say my salary is 100, or just to make it more blunt, we'll say 300. Well, there you go. So if your object has a property, it can override a default. And that's at a pretty high level where we need to understand destructuring objects, destructuring arrays. You'll see that in your code this semester. We'll be leveraging this feature. Ready to continue? Questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
When does an example
Default values, think about like user registration, you know? If a user is registering for your site and maybe a default value for their role would be customer, you know? So maybe they can change that role somehow, but they have a default role of customer. So you want to enable a default value for your standard registration, but they can override that maybe by selecting something else in the drop-down list, right? So that's a good question, and that's kind of one example. Good question. Yeah, because a salary probably doesn't have a default. Salaries, or maybe it does. Maybe a salary, you know, you have a new employee, all your employees make $15 an hour starting, you know? All right, let's go down into rest and spread. Now, rest and spread syntax, they look the same. Use 3 dots notation. Okay, so whether it's technically the rest operator or it's technically the spread operator, they're both 3 dots. And so it's safe to say that, you know, that you'll get them confused, right? Spread expands an array into separate elements. Rest collects multiple elements and condenses them into a single element. Uh-huh. That was GitHub Copilot. By the way, you guys do have access to that Copilot through GitHub and through, if you signed up for GitHub Education a semester ago. So again, spread takes an array. Array is one thing, right? An array is one thing, and it spreads it out into multiple things. Rest takes multiple things and brings them into one. So they're just doing opposite operations. Does that make sense? They're doing opposite operation. One is taking one thing and spreading them out. Another thing is taking multiple things and condensing them into one element. So let's take a look at spread. I'm going to make a function called add numbers equals, and here I'm taking in the 3 dot operator. I'm going to condense 3 into this array. So this would actually be rest. So this example, hold on here. I'm going to change this to be spread. Okay, so we take in 3 and we return the sum of those 3 values. So this is our function. The function is called add numbers. It has 3 input parameters and it returns those 3 values added together. Let's take an array 1, 2, 3. And then let's console log add numbers. And here is your spread operator. We're taking our numbers array, which is 1, 2, and 3, spreading them. So here's your array, and you're spreading them out into individual pieces, right? Inside of this function call, you're spreading the numbers array into individual pieces so that they could be added together and spit back into the console. You kind of saw an example of me getting those two things crossed in the beginning. I started to write the wrong thing. So here's your spread operator again, right here. It's 3 dots. And expanding an array into separate elements. Does that make sense for everybody? See it? Making sense? And of course, 1 plus 2 is 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6. And so we are demonstrating the spread operator. And last but not least, the rest syntax. That's the other way around. Taking separate elements and condensing them. So let's write our function. Add more numbers. And this is going to be where we do the dots inside of the parameter. Now this is kind of an interesting syntax. Numbers dot reduce sum. So numbers will be an array, right? The reduce method of an array instances executes a user supplied reducer callback function on each element of the array in order, passing the return value from the calculation on the preceding element. The final result of the running the reducer across all elements of the array is a single value. So you're just kind of taking two values at a time and returning those two values added together. Then it goes to the next value and adds on the next value, and then it adds on the next value. Right? So this will allow us to take in any input, any number of inputs into this function. This is really powerful, by the way. This right here, in C#, you guys might remember overloaded methods, right? And we would have to write, if we had a function that we want to call add, you know, we might have to add with 2 numbers, and we say add with 3 numbers, add with 4 numbers. You'd have to overload a method for all the potential values you might have to add together. With this REST operator, we could say, hey, our function, I don't know how many parameters we can send it, but you can send it 1 parameter, you can send it 20 parameters. You don't have to write an overloaded method. You can write this method function one way, then using this reduce method, just return all the values of them added together. And let's console.log. I'm gonna comment this out so we don't get that confused. And this is really powerful. I'll say 1 plus 1 plus 1, 1, 1, right? And so this is I'm gonna call add more numbers, passing in a bunch of 1s. Or I could say add more numbers, passing it 10 and 10 and 10. Or I can say console log add more numbers, all the numbers, okay? And so I'm a big fan of the REST operator because, again, I kind of come from an object-oriented background where we were overloading a bunch of methods to do something. Well, now our parameters can be dynamic by making this happen. And there you can see adding those numbers together, adding those together, and those together. We get one function that can take a variable number of inputs using this REST. And again, what happens is all these ones get sent into an array called numbers. And then you're looking at, on this numbers array, running the reduce method. Again, kind of read through on what the reduce, how the reduce works, and maybe looking at, this is actually exactly what we're doing. Accumulator plus current value, initial, you know. So check out the reduce method. I don't think we've covered that very much, but I think you can get the gist of it pretty quickly. And there you have this right here. The 3 dots here is the REST operator, whereas in this example, the 3 dots is the spread operator. I promise you, people, myself included, will get those two functions confused. When things are actually being spread apart, you know, they'll call it REST, and when they're being condensed together, they'll call it spread. They'll get it confused. I get it. I'm sure I do that, but there is a fundamental difference, and that spread expands an array into separate elements, and REST condenses into a single. All right. Okay. Those were the examples that I thought were left outstanding that we didn't already cover this week. We have covered a lot this week. Okay. So I'm going to stop the lecture here.